I spent 10 years believing loyalty was a ladder, one painful rung at a time. Late nights, ruined birthdays, missed vacations, all for the moment I'd stand in front of the board and hear them say, "Director." Funny how life loves irony. I was outside the boardroom that morning, holding the speech I'd rewritten 9 times, not because it needed perfection, but because I did. My assistant whispered, "They better give you this," and I smiled, not knowing the decision had already been carved in secrecy. Inside, they weren't voting for me. They were erasing me. The owner cleared his throat, smiled a little too wide, and introduced someone no one respected, his nephew. A man with 0 experience, a history of entitlement, and a smirk that told me he knew before I did. That moment didn't destroy me. It redefined me. Because when you dedicate a decade to a company and they replace you with nepotism, you don't fall apart, you wake up. And little did they know, I was about to uncover the one truth that would unravel everything they thought they controlled. Where loyalty dies, vengeance finds purpose. People call it a corporate ladder, but they never tell you it's mostly splinters and missing steps. I joined Sterling Logistics Group when I was 22, the kind of mid-sized American company that bragged about legacy, family culture, and quarterly earnings more than employee welfare. My first desk was an unstable folding table near the breakroom ice machine. HR handed me a badge that literally said temporary access. I remember thinking, one day I want a door with my name on it. 10 years later, I had one. Title, Senior Operations Manager. Everyone else assumed I already ran the place, because in many ways, I did. My name is Emma Clark. At Sterling, I was the person they called when things were on fire but nobody wanted credit for extinguishing them. Emma, can you fix this? Emma, you're the only one who understands this client. Emma, this technically isn't your job, but... Corporate translation, you're reliable, therefore you're expendable. But I played the long game. The director of operations role had been vacant for 18 months, and I'd quietly been doing it without the paycheck or business card. People talked about it like gravity. When they finally make you director, they have to after this year's numbers. Just a matter of time. I let myself believe it. My assistant, Mia, kept me sane through the chaos. She brought coffee and sarcasm in equal doses. "Good morning, Director Clark," she'd say. "You're manifesting again," I'd reply. She'd just wink. "Someone has to. You're too busy doing the job." I had it all lined up, restructuring ideas, team priorities, even a new blazer that cost more than my weekly groceries. The universe started whispering doubt the week of a strategic leadership session. The invite list was odd, people who should be there weren't, and a few names who didn't belong suddenly appeared. I arrived early, because if you're a woman in corporate America aiming for leadership, you learn early that late equals invisible. The room smelled like polished wood and pre-planned decisions. Then he walked in. Late 20s, expensive suit, posture of someone who's never failed because he's never been allowed to. He didn't sign in. He didn't introduce himself. He walked straight to a board-level seat near the CEO, Richard Sterling, and sat like he owned the room. Richard came in moments later, clapped him on the shoulder, and said, "Everyone, this is Ethan Sterling, my nephew. He'll be around more." Around more. Not a role. Not a function. Just, around. Corporate royalty always arrives with no resume but endless access. Ethan spent the meeting scrolling his phone, only interrupting to say things every intern learns week 1. "We should look at tech investments. What if we just targeted bigger clients? I think younger talent isn't utilized." Richard nodded like Ethan was reinventing capitalism. Afterward, Ethan stepped into my path. "So you're Emma," he said, like we'd been waiting for that line. "Yes. Senior Operations Manager. Uncle Rick says you keep this place from sinking. Nice work." It sounded like a compliment until he followed with, "I'll be working closely with the board over the next few months. Lots of changes coming. I'm sure we'll intersect." Changes. Delivered with entitlement, not respect. That night, I stared at the ceiling longer than I slept. Boards don't replace proven leaders with inexperienced relatives. At least, that's what I believed. Back before I learned that in corporate America, merit is a decoration, leverage is the currency. The morning after that meeting, the office felt different. Not visibly, printers still jammed, coffee still tasted like burnt dreams, but people whispered more quietly, glanced at closed doors more often. Sterling Logistics wasn't a company that liked surprises. The only time you saw sudden change was when someone with the right last name caused it. Ethan Sterling began shadowing different departments, though shadowing implies observing. He inserted himself. One week he sat with finance, nodding like he understood balance sheets. Another week, operations, my territory, where he asked questions that belonged in Business 101 textbooks. Why don't we just automate everything? Can't someone else handle client complaints? I'd smile politely while Mia sat behind him taking notes, mostly sarcastic ones. Should we order him a world's best Nepo baby mug, she whispered once. I elbowed her to behave, but we laughed about it afterward. Still, there was an edge to his presence. Everywhere he went, senior leaders stiffened. During a quarterly prep meeting, Ethan interrupted me mid-sentence. Emma, I think we should restructure ops leadership entirely. It feels outdated. Outdated? I had just rebuilt 2 divisions. Richard looked at him with paternal indulgence. Let's explore it, he said. Explore. Corporate code for, we'll pretend this is a real idea. That was the first time I felt a chill, the subtle shift from valued to evaluated. 2 weeks later, I learned about an offsite board meeting. No agenda circulated. No invite for me, which was strange. I normally presented numbers. Mia leaned into my doorway, arms folded. They're meeting at the country club, she said. No one knows why. I shrugged, feigning calm. Probably normal board politics. But her face said what my gut already knew, you should be there, and the fact you aren't is the message. The following Monday, IT emailed me documentation access changes, small ones, but ones I noticed immediately. 2 folders I'd always had clearance to view suddenly required authorization. When I asked, the response was vague. Access levels are being updated per executive request. Executive request. But which executive? Later, in the copy room, I overheard 2 VPs muttering. If she doesn't get it, morale will tank. Richard won't care. Family first. Still, Emma earned it. They stopped talking when I walked in, too late, words already downloaded into my brain. Ethan got bolder. He began sitting in on performance reviews he wasn't scheduled for. He referred to people as assets and expendables like he was narrating a hostile takeover thriller. Once, while passing each other near the elevators, he said casually. So, Emma, big meeting coming up. Excited? Yes, I replied. He smirked. You should be, change is good for everyone. Everyone. Meaning him. The night before the promotion meeting, Mia stayed late with me. You've built too much to be overlooked, she said. They can't risk alienating half the leadership. I nodded, but doubt sat heavy. What worries me, I admitted, is not losing the role. It's being blindsided. Mia softened. Then don't be. Go unprepared for anything. It was good advice. I told myself I was ready. But looking back, nothing prepares you for betrayal delivered with applause. I rehearsed my acceptance lines, carefully confident but not arrogant. Board members filed in with neutral smiles, the kind you wear when you know something the other person doesn't. When Richard walked up to the podium, his tone wasn't celebratory, it was performative. I want to recognize someone special, he began. My heart steadied. And announce leadership for our next phase. Mia squeezed my arm. Richard smiled wide, too wide. Sterling Logistics is appointing Ethan Sterling as Director of Operations. A sprinkling of polite applause. A few shocked side glances. And Ethan, wearing that same lazy smirk from the first day. I didn't hear the rest. My pulse drowned the room. That moment didn't break me. It activated me. Because humiliation isn't an ending, it's proof someone underestimated the wrong person. If anyone noticed I didn't applaud, they pretended not to. I sat there, hands folded, face neutral, the same expression board members wear when discussing layoffs. Ethan walked up to the podium, accepted his title like a participation trophy, and launched into a speech I recognized from LinkedIn motivational posts. Leadership is about vision. We must embrace change. I'm honored to guide Sterling into the future. He didn't thank anyone on the operations team, the people whose results made this promotion possible. He didn't look at me once, except when he returned to his seat and whispered, almost gleefully. Told you things were changing. I didn't answer. Because shock wasn't my dominant emotion anymore. Calculation was. After the meeting, executives congratulated Ethan like they were shaking hands with discomfort. No one looked comfortable. Richard avoided my eyes completely, guilt is loud even when silence speaks. Mia rushed to my side as soon as the crowd dispersed. I don't get it, she whispered. This makes no sense. Ethan has no track record. Sense isn't a job requirement here, I said. Bloodline is. She stared at me, angry for me in a way I wasn't allowed to be. Are you okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. That was the moment the first fracture in my loyalty formed. The next few days were strange. People who normally confided in me were cautious. Some avoided me, like associating with the passed-over candidate was politically risky. Others offered condolences disguised as compliments. You deserved it. This company doesn't know what it loses. If you ever leave, take me with you. That last one came from our head of finance, a man who never joked. Ethan, meanwhile, floated through the halls like a campus frat star who accidentally became principal. He called impromptu meetings, made sweeping strategy declarations, and referenced himself as the youngest director in company history more than once. But something gnawed at me, not just unfairness, but the speed of it all. Promotions like his don't happen overnight. Titles don't magically appear. Someone prepped the paperwork, updated corporate filings, rewrote org charts. I started replaying the past months. The weirdly curated invite list. The offsite board meeting. The shifting document access. The sudden reverence directed at Ethan. This wasn't impulsive. It was coordinated. But coordinated by who? Or, coordinated because someone forced them to? Suspicion overpowered humiliation by week 2. Ethan slipped up during a meeting. Arrogance always leaves fingerprints. We were reviewing logistics projections when he casually remarked. Uncle Rick didn't really have a choice. He needed someone who could help him. You know? The way he said help him, like leverage, not skill, made something click. I'd been around enough board politics to recognize when someone's being shielded, not supported. After the meeting, I contacted Antonio, a senior IT analyst who owed me a favor after I once helped him keep a mishandled server migration out of HR's report. "Ant," I said, "I need something." Quietly. He looked uneasy but nodded. "If it's within ethical boundaries." "It is," I lied. "I just need access logs around exec file directories." "Anything unusual mid-last quarter?" He paled slightly. "Anything unusual around the CEO, you mean?" He said it, not me. "Interesting. Just tell me if someone pulled restricted files or transferred anything." "Give me a day," he said. "And, Emma? Be careful." The next day, he didn't email. He walked directly to my office, closed the door, and spoke low. "There's a video," he said. What?" "A video file on Richard Sterling's drive. Deleted, but not securely. It was recovered and accessed by one user." "Who?" He swallowed. "Ethan." Then he slid a USB across my desk. "I shouldn't be doing this," he muttered, "but after the way they treated you, I think you should see it." My breath stopped as I clicked play. It was security camera footage, Richard Sterling signing off on something at midnight in a private conference room, with someone whose face was obscured. Money exchanged hands. Documents slipped across the table. Illegal. Unmistakably illegal. And then, Ethan, in the doorway's reflection, phone raised, filming. I froze. Ethan didn't just walk in and inherit a title. He blackmailed his way into it, and Richard surrendered rather than face exposure. The board didn't promote him. They were coerced into installing him. My humiliation? Collateral damage. Which meant Ethan wasn't the top problem. Richard was. And suddenly, grief evaporated. Something far colder, and far more useful, replaced it. Purpose. The video played only 42 seconds. But it rewired everything I thought I knew about Sterling logistics, and about power. Richard Sterling, CEO, signing papers in a closed boardroom at nearly midnight. A man with blurred facial identity exchanging something that looked very much like cash. And then, in the reflection of the glass wall, Ethan Sterling, quietly recording on his phone. I watched it 3 times. The first time, I gasped. The second, I swallowed the shock. The third, I stopped feeling anything at all. Antonio sat across from me, hands clasped, eyes flicking between my face and the door. "I didn't do this," he murmured. "You didn't get it from me." "Of course," I said, voice calm, too calm, because clarity has a way of strangling panic. Richard wasn't mentoring Ethan. He wasn't rewarding him. He was being controlled by him. Ethan didn't win the promotion, he took it hostage. And Ethan didn't step into leadership, he became the company's insurance policy. I removed the USB and tucked it into a folder. Antonio stood. "Emma, whatever you do with this, remember who you are. And, watch your back." He left quietly. His warning lingered louder than the video. For 3 days, I said nothing. I walked the halls like a ghost with a pulse, outwardly composed, inwardly extracting emotional splinters. People still gave the look, the "you were robbed" face, but I had crossed an invisible line. I no longer wanted the chair they stole. I wanted the system that enabled it. Ethan strutted into meetings like he'd discovered sunlight. He told the operations team they would be shifting priorities, which translated to vague reorganizing without actual direction. During one presentation, he mispronounced logistics, and a VP winced so hard I thought he would collapse. The board tolerated him, but not willingly. Eyes narrowed when his name was mentioned. Whisper trails followed him into hallways. The CFO, a man allergic to gossip, almost choked laughing after Ethan suggested we outsource the entire compliance department. Sterling Logistics wasn't a perfect company, but it was a professional one. Ethan was chaos with a badge. The difference between merit and leverage was suddenly visible everywhere. Mia noticed before anyone else did that something had shifted in me. You're too quiet, she said one morning, handing me coffee. I don't trust it. Maybe I'm growing, I replied. She scoffed. Maybe you're plotting. Same thing, I suppose. I didn't answer. She leaned against my doorway, studying me. Whatever's brewing, don't do it alone. That struck deeper than she knew. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix the company. I was preparing to expose it. I spent evenings combing through policy manuals, the digital bones of sterling logistics. Buried in compliance sections were gems. Blackmail constitutes fiduciary misconduct. Board decisions made under coercion can be invalidated. Evidence of executive criminal behavior triggers mandatory reporting. Sterling Logistics had built itself on old-fashioned structures, the kind that assumed wrongdoing would come from the outside, not from the CEO's nephew holding him hostage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their rules would be my weapon. But there was a problem. The video wasn't enough. It proved Ethan recorded something incriminating, but I needed proof. The deed was illegal. Ethan used the recording to secure his promotion. Richard bowed to the threat. 1 out of 3 wouldn't win. I needed all 3. I also needed allies. Sterling Logistics leadership wasn't loyal, but it was self-preserving. If Ethan's presence threatened the firm's integrity, someone would defect. Who? The CFO was my first guess. Numbers people hate volatility. I bumped into him in the parking lot one evening. Long story short, he was unhappy. I didn't agree to that vote, he finally confessed. But Richard had pressure to resolve. The way he said pressure, tight jaw, lowered tone, confirmed it. He didn't know about the video, but he knew something existed. I left that conversation certain of 2 things. Ethan didn't just blackmail Richard, the board knew they were compromising governance. Some of them regretted it. Regret is leverage. I just needed more. 2 nights later, I went back through the USB. Frame by frame. There, a reflection angle and a metal sign behind Ethan. It captured something subtle. Ethan wasn't just recording. He was smiling while recording. Predators don't panic, they enjoy dominance. There was also an audio spike, faint, but Antonio had enhanced it for me without saying so. A voice, Richard's, saying, "Don't you dare. You'll ruin me." Then Ethan's voice. "Only if you stop cooperating." That line was enough to rewire my pulse. He didn't just threaten, he spelled out the agreement. I leaned back, breathing in slow, measured rhythm. This wasn't a career setback anymore. It was corporate extortion. In America, that doesn't just topple titles. It dismantles companies. I didn't rush to act. A true strategic move is built slowly, deliberately, without emotional fingerprints. So I started gathering. HR exit grievances from employees Ethan fired or demoted. Documentation of procedural violations. Emails where board members acknowledged concerns about him. The compliance handbook section on coercion invalidating decisions. And the crown jewel, the video. I wasn't going to leak it. I was going to weaponize it. But first, I needed one more thing. Proof that Ethan continued exerting leverage. And I got it in the most anticlimactic way imaginable. He bragged. During a leadership meeting, while discussing budget sign-offs, he gestured at Richard and smirked. "Well, I always get what I need from him. Right, uncle?" It sounded playful but landed like poison. Richard stiffened. A VP's pen froze mid-note. The general counsel looked up sharply. There was subtext there. And everyone heard it. That night, I stayed in the office long after lights dimmed. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was aligning pieces. Ethan thought he'd trapped Richard. He didn't realize Richard and the board had now become liabilities, not allies. And he certainly didn't realize I had seen the one thing everyone else ignored. When you build your throne on blackmail, your throne belongs to whoever finds the original evidence. I powered down my laptop, slid the USB into my bag, and whispered to the empty office. "You took my promotion. I'll take your crown." The game wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. And I had just stepped onto the board, not as a pawn, but as the unseen player. The universe rarely hands you revenge neatly packaged. It hands you information, and waits to see what you'll do with it. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't loud in boardrooms, it's documented. And now I had something Ethan never expected anyone else to possess. Evidence of the evidence. The first strike wasn't a blow. It was a statement. 3 days after reviewing the video, I requested a meeting with Richard Sterling. Not Ethan. Richard. The guard at the executive floor looked startled, even uncomfortable. "Do you have an appointment?" I slid a printed agenda under the glass, something he wouldn't understand but would fear showing his boss was denied. "Tell him it's regarding operational compliance exposure." Executives don't ignore those words. 5 minutes later, I was ushered into Richard's office. The air smelled of leather polish and anxiety. He sat rigidly behind his desk, the desk on which he'd surrendered control of his company. Emma, he said, forced warmth in his voice. What can I do for you? I sat across from him. You promoted Ethan. His jaw tensed. Yes. The board believes he. Stop, I said softly. He blinked, thrown. I'm not here to challenge your decision. I let silence stretch. I'm here to ask if you've reviewed internal compliance risks surrounding it. His eyes flickered. Fear, subtle but visible. I assure you everything is aligned with governance. Good, I said. Then you won't mind signing this acknowledgement, confirming the promotion decision was made without coercion or conflict. I slid a single-page document forward. Richard's hands hovered above it. Not touching. It's standard, I said. Protects you. Protects the company. He didn't move. The silence was loud. He wasn't refusing because it was unnecessary. He was refusing because he couldn't. I leaned forward. Richard, I whispered, I don't want your job anymore. His eyes widened. What I do want is answers. There it was, the crack. Emma, he whispered, voice unsteady, you don't understand. I understand enough, I replied. Enough to know someone is holding leverage against you. His face went pale. That's a dangerous assumption. Is it? I asked. Or is it more dangerous that someone else already knows, and you don't know who? His breathing hitched. You don't have proof, he said. Oh, Richard. I smiled faintly. You should pray I don't. He pushed back from the table, a tiny retreat disguised as repositioning. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm warning you, whatever game Ethan thinks he's playing, he isn't the only one watching anymore. I stood, gathering the folder. Fix it, I told him. Fix what? He asked, a little too quickly. The situation, I said. Before someone less invested discovers it. And then I walked out, leaving him drowning in the one thing he'd avoided. Being seen. The second strike wasn't directed at Richard. It was aimed at Ethan. You don't expose a narcissist with facts, you expose him with doubt. Because doubt makes narcissists unravel. I waited until an operations leadership meeting. The room filled with department heads, the same people Ethan hoped would admire him. He waltzed in late, carrying iced coffee, performing confidence. Richard was conspicuously absent. Ethan clapped his hands. Let's do a quick realignment of directives, he said. We're restructuring budget control, all approvals must now go through me. He paused, waiting for a reaction. I gave him one. Interesting, I said evenly. Has Richard delegated fiduciary authority formally? Because without documented delegation, that would constitute illegal override. The room stiffened, collectively. Ethan blinked. Excuse me? I repeated it. If restructuring isn't documented, then decisions you make could be challenged, even reversed. Boardroom rule number 1. Question authority publicly, you corner it privately. His smirk faltered for the first time. I have Richard's backing. Then you won't mind circulating that, I replied. For compliance. The CFO beside him rubbed his temple, a half-smothered smile. Ethan looked around, expecting someone to jump to save him. No one did. Public weakness is a smell. And he had just leaked it. He ended the meeting early. Perfect. Later that afternoon, he stormed into my office without knocking. What the hell was that? I didn't look up immediately. When I did, my voice was soft, the way surgeons speak before cutting. That was a reminder, power isn't real unless it's documented. You're playing a very stupid game, he hissed. No, Ethan, I said calmly. I'm just playing better. His jaw worked like he wanted to spit something ugly, but he held back. You think you know something, he said. You don't. I held his gaze. I know enough. He stepped closer, too close, the intimidation tactic of someone who's never faced a real opponent. You don't scare me, he said. Good, I replied. Because fear makes people sloppy. He stood there, breathing sharp, and then walked out, slamming the door. The slam wasn't victory, it was a symptom. He was rattled. Perfect. That week, I set the third strike. I scheduled a compliance consult with the firm's outside counsel, the firm used when Sterling Logistics was too nervous for internal legal. We met at a coffee shop, discreet but intentional. I presented it as a hypothetical governance concern. A coerced executive appointment. Videographic leverage. Board complicity. Risk of corporate liability. The attorney's face tightened more with each piece. Emma, he said finally, if this were true, Sterling would face criminal liability, shareholder suits, and regulatory intervention. I nodded. Then you might want to review the board's last appointment decision. I didn't give him the video, not yet. Just direction. Attorneys don't look for smoke. They look for fire hazards. He left knowing Sterling Logistics was sitting on a bonfire. By the end of the week, Richard was pale in meetings. The board whispered more. The general counsel requested private discussions. Ethan watched me with suspicion, not arrogance. I hadn't leaked anything. I'd just lit a match near oxygen. And in corporate America, sometimes all it takes to start a chain reaction is showing that someone else already knows. If guilt had a face, it would have looked like Richard Sterling's the following week. He was quieter in meetings. Less certain. The CEO who usually dominated the room with corporate cliches suddenly deferred to others, especially when Ethan spoke. His eyes darted. His hands fidgeted with his pen. He looked owned. Meanwhile, Ethan tried extra hard to look unbothered. He made louder jokes. Talked over people more often. Signed emails with ES, Director of Ops, like it was a royal seal. Arrogance is a perfume. When people start overusing it, you know they're sweating. The first visible crack appeared in a Tuesday financial review. We were going over budget projections when the CFO, Daniel, shifted the conversation. We'll need updated authorization documentation, he said suddenly, eyes on Ethan. For audit trail reasons. It's standard whenever power is concentrated. It wasn't standard. He was creating standard. Ethan frowned. You have my appointment memo. Correct, Daniel replied, calm. But not a record affirming that the decision was made free of conflict or duress. My phrase. He'd lifted it right out of the acknowledgement document I once slid across Richard's desk. Richard stiffened at the word duress. So, Daniel continued, I'll need board confirmation in writing that there was no undue influence on your appointment. The room went still. Ethan laughed, too loudly. Is this a joke? You're questioning my legitimacy? Daniel didn't flinch. I'm protecting the company. If there's nothing to worry about, it's a quick formality. The general counsel, seated at the end of the table, didn't intervene. He should have. He didn't. Which meant one thing. He wanted this on record too. After the meeting, I found Daniel by the elevators. That was bold, I said. He exhaled. I'm tired of pretending. About what? He gave me a pointed look. I don't know what you think you know, Emma, he said, but I know this much, Richard is compromised, and the board is scared of the fallout. Ethan thinks he's a strategic asset, but he's a liability the size of our entire annual revenue. You think this will break? I asked. He nodded once. Pressure always goes somewhere. I'm making sure it goes in the direction with the least collateral damage. His eyes lingered on mine. You're prepared if things implode, right? I'm better than prepared, I said. I'm ready. He smiled faintly. Good. Don't let them write you out of the story they made you bleed for. The outside counsel moved faster than I expected. By Thursday, rumors spread that an independent governance review had been initiated. That phrase alone sent waves through the exec floor. Governance review meant digging into board decisions, revisiting key votes, scrutinizing conflicts of interest. And Ethan, whether he understood the legal implications or not, understood one thing. He was suddenly questioned. He hated it. He cornered me in the hallway later that day. You did this, he spat. I raised an eyebrow. Did what? Ask for standard accountability? Don't play dumb, Emma. You've been stirring people up. No, I said smoothly. I've just been telling the truth loud enough that people can't pretend not to hear it. His jaw clenched. You really think you can outmaneuver me? I don't have to, I said. I just have to let you keep talking. He stepped closer, voice low and sharp. You have no idea what I have on Richard. I have a guess, I replied. And so will other people soon enough. He went pale, just for half a second. Then he masked it with anger. You're overestimating your importance here, he said. You're just. He stopped. I waited. Just what? I asked gently. Replaceable? His lips pressed into a line. Yes, he said finally. Everyone is. Even you, I answered. Especially someone whose entire value depends on a single file. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I walked away before he recovered. That night, I got an email. From General Counsel. Subject, confidential inquiry. I'd like to schedule a private conversation regarding recent concerns raised about executive decision-making. Purely procedural, but your perspective would be valuable. Valuable. Funny choice of word. We met in a small conference room the next morning. No windows. Neutral wall art. The kind of room usually reserved for HR terminations and legal disclaimers. He began politely. Emma, you've been with Sterling for a decade. Yes. And you were, at one point, a candidate for Director of Operations. At several points, I said. Unofficially. A small smile ghosted across his face. Off the record, he said, closing his folder. Do you believe Ethan's appointment was justified? Corporate translation, tell me the truth. I already know the answer. No, I replied. Not based on merit. Merit isn't always the deciding factor, he said. I know, I answered. That's the problem. He studied me. Is there anything you'd like to share that might be relevant to this review? This was the moment. I could drop the video now and let everything explode. Or I could be smarter. I leaned back. Let me ask you something first, I said. If there was concrete proof that Ethan coerced Richard using incriminating material, what would happen? He hesitated, then answered like a law professor. On paper? Ethan would be removed. Richard could face removal or resignation. The board could be liable. The company could face regulatory scrutiny, lawsuits, and reputation damage. And in reality? I asked. In reality, he sighed, we'd try to contain it. Quiet settlement. Controlled exits. Internal cleanup. Cleanup. That's all I needed to hear. Then, I said carefully, I would suggest you look very closely at Richard's personal drive access logs and off-hour security footage for the last year. His eyes sharpened. You've seen something. I've seen enough to know you're asking the right questions, I said. And that you're asking a little late. He didn't push further. But his whole posture changed. I'd just drawn him a map. The fallout began in whispers. First, a board meeting rescheduled, code for emergency session. Then, a closed-door huddle between Richard, the general counsel, and outside attorneys. Followed by a sudden internal audit, for process strengthening. Ethan pretended everything was normal, but his mask slipped more often. He snapped at staff. He overcorrected in meetings. He talked too much, too fast, about total confidence in the board. People who'd once sucked up to him began keeping their distance. No one likes standing next to a lightning rod in a storm. 2 weeks into the review, Mia slipped into my office, eyes wide. You're not going to believe this. At this point, I said, I probably will. She shut the door. HR just got instructions to prepare severance frameworks, for executives. Not staff. Executives. Who? I asked. She shook her head. Names weren't shared. But Emma, her voice softened. You're not on the prep list. I checked. A weight I didn't know I'd been carrying unclenched. They're not planning to sacrifice you, she said. You're not their scapegoat. No, I replied slowly. I'm their witness. And witnesses don't get thrown out. Not until everything's over. The secondary twist came in the form of an email I wasn't supposed to see. Mia forwarded it to me, subject line, you should read this. It was a fragment of a thread between two board members. If we cut Ethan, he'll expose Richard. If we cut Richard, Ethan might leak anyway. We need a way to neutralize both without burning the company down. They weren't looking for justice. They were looking for containment. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just sitting on a revenge story. I was sitting on negotiation power. Their goal was survival. Mine was reclamation. Those two goals didn't have to be enemies. I could let them clean their mess, as long as they didn't pretend I was never part of the building in the first place. The tower was leaning. Ethan thought he'd engineered it that way. He had no idea I'd already quietly moved my own pieces out from underneath it. All that was left now? Was deciding whether I wanted to watch it fall from a distance, or stand in the room when gravity finally did its job. And I already knew the answer. I wanted front row seats. Because some lessons? You have to watch people learn the hard way. Especially when they taught you, for 10 years straight, that loyalty was replaceable. The day the tower finally began to fall didn't look dramatic. The sun was painfully normal, the lobby smelled like burnt espresso, and someone was still complaining that the vending machine ate their dollar. Sterling Logistics didn't know it was bleeding out, not yet. But executives feel storms before employees do. You see it in their eyes first. And Richard Sterling looked like a man who had spent the night staring at the ceiling, waiting for someone to knock on his door with bad news. He called a leadership priority briefing that morning, an unusual title for something scheduled only 2 hours in advance. Attendance was mandatory. Mandatory speaks louder than agenda. We filed into the boardroom. Richard sat at the head, Ethan at his right, too close, too proud, too unaware of the weight about to crush him. The general counsel and outside attorneys occupied the opposite side, silent and observing, the way professionals look before performing surgery. Daniel, the CFO, chose a seat directly across from Ethan. I took the one beside Daniel, not too far, not too obvious, but exactly where I could watch them both. Richard cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. There are governance matters the board has been reviewing. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, posture of someone who thought he was untouchable. That arrogance would be magnificent fertilizer for what was coming. Richard continued. We believe there have been procedural irregularities in recent decision-making and a need to re-evaluate the July appointment. There were no gasps. People had seen the writing. But Ethan? He straightened so fast his chair squeaked. You can't reevaluate my appointment, he snapped. It was legitimate. Silence. Everyone heard the desperation. Richard avoided eye contact, the first sign Ethan wasn't in control anymore. I'd like us to move forward constructively, Richard said, voice tense. We need to stabilize leadership confidence. Ethan scoffed. This is ridiculous. You signed it, Uncle. The board voted. You all supported me. So if anyone is questioning legitimacy. He stopped himself, too late. Daniel leaned forward, hands folded. Careful, he said softly. Leverage is only useful when no one can prove it existed. The attorney at the end of the table clicked a pen, the smallest, quietest acknowledgement that Daniel's words weren't hypothetical. Ethan's face drained. Richard finally looked at him, and I saw something startling. Fear, yes. But also resentment. Blackmailers don't just own you, they humiliate you. And humiliation ferments. The attorney spoke for the first time. The board intends to initiate a corrective transition. Ethan, you will be stepping down pending review. Those words, stepping down pending review, are corporate death sentences. Ethan lurched forward. You can't fire me. If I go down, he goes down. There it was. Not implied. Not whispered. Said. Out loud. In a room full of witnesses. The attorney didn't blink. That sounds like coercion, Mr. Sterling. Would you like that on the record? Ethan froze, he understood enough legal risk to stop talking. Richard did something unexpected. He pushed back his chair and finally faced Ethan. You thought backing me into a corner meant you owned the company, he said quietly. You didn't consider what would happen if someone else found out. Ethan stared at him, betrayed. You're turning on me? I'm surviving, Richard replied. The boardroom had become a courtroom. And Ethan was losing. But he wasn't done fighting. His eyes flicked around, searching for allies. Emma, he said suddenly, desperate. Tell them I earned this. You know. That you filmed your uncle committing misconduct to secure your position? I asked calmly. Gasps this time, small, shocked, delicious. Ethan stared at me like I'd stabbed him. You don't have proof, he whispered. I held his gaze. Are you sure? His breathing stuttered. Every eye in the room followed the volley. Richard's fingers trembled, because he knew exactly how sure I was. The attorney interjected. Let's move to resolution terms. Ethan pounded the table. You can't just erase me. The general counsel's tone was ice. No one is erasing you. We are mitigating the damage you created. Richard looked sick, but resigned. I wanted to protect the company, he said weakly. But you forced my hand. Ethan laughed, bitter, wild. I forced your hand? You were the one signing deals at midnight. The sentence echoed. Richard flinched. The attorney made a note. Sometimes justice arrives through accident, arrogance tripping over its own feet. Then Richard spoke words no one expected. I'm resigning. The room went silent. The attorney didn't react, meaning the board already had his resignation prepared. Effective immediately, Richard continued, voice brittle. The board will appoint interim leadership while they conduct investigation. Ethan shot up from his seat. You're not pinning this on me. Daniel stood too, slow, deliberate. This isn't about blame. It's about containment. Containment again. But this time, I saw something else, relief. Because the board had finally found a plug for the leak. Richard would fall quietly. Ethan would fall loudly. The company would survive. I had given them the route. As the meeting adjourned, Ethan tried one last play. This isn't over. You're all complicit. If I go down, I expose everyone. Daniel's smile was razor thin. Only if you still hold the original recording. Ethan blinked. Of course I do. His voice died. Daniel looked at me. I didn't smile, but I didn't have to. Ethan's dawning horror was the dessert. He lunged toward me. Give it back. Security intercepted him before he reached me. He kicked, cursed, shouted, but by then, nobody was listening. Because the moment he'd lost wasn't when they removed him. It was when he understood. He wasn't the only one with leverage anymore. Richard approached me after the room cleared. His voice shook. You could have destroyed me. Why didn't you? Because you weren't my target, I said. The rot was. He swallowed. What do you want? Finally, the question. I want a correction, I said. A real one. And if we give it, he asked. Then this stays internal. His shoulders sagged like a man reprieved from execution. I'll instruct the board to finalize the transition, he said. We'll need interim operational leadership. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. We both knew who he was referring to. I didn't respond immediately. Letting people reach their own conclusions is more powerful than demanding outcomes. I'll consider it, I said. And I walked away. In the hallway, Mia was waiting. You did it, she whispered. No, I corrected softly. They did it to themselves. I just made sure someone was paying attention. She smiled. So, is this where you become director? I exhaled, slow, controlled. No, I said. This is where I choose what that title is worth to me. And that was the truth. Because the crown wasn't the victory anymore. Control was. In the days that followed, Sterling Logistics behaved like a body waking up from surgery, slow, stiff, disoriented, bleeding but alive. Richard's resignation email hit inboxes with sterile language. Effective immediately, a leadership transition will ensure long-term integrity and alignment with company values. No mention of Ethan. No thank you to him either. His name had already been scrubbed from org charts, internal portals, and the lobby directory. The company erased him the way institutions always erase liabilities, quietly, quickly, as if pretending they weren't honored guests just weeks prior. The board tapped Daniel as acting CEO. A safe choice. A stabilizer. And then came the meeting I knew was coming. The boardroom felt smaller without Richard. Daniel headed the table now, steady hands, steady tone. He opened with a sentence that carried more weight than any title could. Emma, the board acknowledges your contributions and your restraint. Restraint. That was their polite word for leverage they didn't want weaponized. We'd like to formally offer you the role of Director of Operations, he continued. Effective immediately. Everyone watched me, waiting to see whether I'd bow or bargain. For 10 years, I believed the title mattered. That validation was the victory. Now? I'd seen too much. I leaned forward slightly. Thank you, I said. But I'm not accepting. Shock flickered across faces. Daniel blinked. May I ask why? Because you don't need another loyal workhorse, I replied. You need someone who sees the cracks before they split the building. A pause, heavy, but not hostile. What I want, I continued, is autonomy. Project authority. A role defined by transformation, not maintenance. Let me restructure what nearly collapsed this company. The general counsel nodded first. A chief integrity and operations reform lead, he murmured thoughtfully. That would report directly to the board, Daniel added. Higher influence than a director. Higher influence. Less political theater. More freedom. Exactly what I wanted. Then yes, I said. I accept. Relief softened the room. Deals made quietly are more binding than the ones announced loudly. Outside, Mia practically tackled me. So? They offered director, I said. And? I countered. Her jaw dropped. Only you would turn down the job they stole from you just to negotiate something better. Only after learning they never deserved my loyalty, I corrected. She laughed, teary-eyed. Promise me one thing, she said. Don't become them. I held her gaze. That was never the plan. Ethan? He disappeared in a blur of NDAs, legal settlements, and disgruntled whispers. Last I heard, he tried floating a startup pitch that no one funded. Turns out leverage doesn't impress investors when it comes with a reputation attached. Richard retired early. Regulators quietly sniffed around. No criminal headlines. Just a legacy tainted enough that LinkedIn praise couldn't polish it. Corporate justice rarely looks like handcuffs. Most days, it looks like being politely erased. My new office had no nameplate at first. I didn't rush to order one. I'd spent a decade chasing validation engraved on metal. Now, I preferred influence carved in policy. My first initiative? Anonymous reporting channels routed outside internal leadership. My second? Board interview protocols requiring background checks on any familial appointment. My third? A restructure of succession planning rooted in merit, with blind voting and external auditors. Subtle. Permanent. The kinds of changes that make corruption harder to breathe. Mia called it poetic punishment. I called it architecture. One evening, while leaving late, Daniel caught up to me. You could have burned this place down, he said. I considered it, I replied. But you didn't. No, I said. Because people here still deserved something worth saving. He nodded slowly. You do realize, he added, your story is going to become office legend. I smiled, not denying it. Let them tell whatever version keeps the next Ethan awake at night. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't victory. It's becoming the reason the powerful learn to fear consequences. Where loyalty died, purpose was born. And that was a crown no title could ever offer.